the craziest things ever seen in space. The Oh My God particle. It is October 15th, 1991, and you and your best scientist bro are hanging out at the Fly's Eye Observatory in Utah. You're doing what you do every evening. You're looking into space for ultra-high energy cosmic rays, trying to find something cool and learn more about the universe. This night was like any other night, if not quieter. There was no new discoveries and nothing to even observe whatsoever. And while you and your scientist buddy were just throwing back scientific beers, you notice a light blinking on your desk. And it's a signal that the Fly's Eye Observatory is picking up something strong. And because this is the most action you've had all night, you decide to take a look at the data. And what you see on the chart blows your mind. As your scientific jaw drops to the scientific floor, all your scientific buddy could say is, "What do you see?" And while thoughts and ideas were bouncing around your mind at 1,000,000 miles per hour, the only words you could utter were, "Oh my God." Later leading to the name of this now iconic particle. The Oh My God particle, which has no relation to the God particle, which came later, was an ultra-high energy cosmic ray that was obviously detected by the Fly's Eye Observatory in Utah in 1991. And at the time, the Oh My God particle was the highest energy cosmic ray ever to be observed. And as of today, in 2026, that record has still yet to be broken, making this particle very fitting of its name. Now, interestingly and somewhat unsurprisingly, this experimental observatory that was built on a military base in Utah was actually specifically built for this one purpose. The so-called high-resolution Fly's Eye detector was literally meant to only capture ultra-high energy cosmic rays. And that, it definitely did. You see, the reason why the Oh My God particle is so significant and the reason why it was so shocking to the scientists who first observed it is because it wasn't only just an anomaly or something that was rare. The energy and speed in which the Oh My God particle possessed was thought to be scientifically impossible prior to its discovery. And even after its observation, it was highly questioned and thoroughly ensured that this wasn't just a miscalculation. For a bit more context, we don't quite know what type of particle the Oh My God particle was, although we can assume that it was a proton due to the fact that nearly 70% of high energy cosmic rays are protons. However, fortunately, what we do know is the sheer insane power that this mysterious particle possessed. For starters, the collision energy of the Oh My God particle was 40 million times more powerful than the highest energy protons ever produced in the world's strongest particle accelerator. That's right. This one random particle was literally 40 million times stronger than the strongest particle that we intentionally accelerated on Earth. And while that obviously is impressive, it's also a bit deceiving. Because although it technically had 40 million times more energy, not all of that energy was available. And the definition of availability in the context of particle collision essentially means the amount of energy that is actually able to create new particles in the event of a collision. And it's been calculated that in the event of an actual particle collision, the Oh My God particle would have had roughly 200 times more energy than the most energetic particle in the world's best particle accelerator. Which is, once again, still impressive, but not 40 million times more impressive. But we've still got more stats to discuss. Going back to the type of particle that the Oh My God particle even is. Assuming that this particle was a proton to begin with, we can assume its rest mass and do the following calculation to determine how fast the particle was going. I'm not even going to try to pretend to understand what I'm looking at right now, but this is the calculation that scientists use to calculate the speed in which one of these particles is traveling. And I suppose, using this specific formula, assuming that the particle was a proton, then it's safe to assume that this particle is literally traveling at 0.999999999999999999957 times the speed of light. Basically a tiny fraction less than the literal speed of light, which is obviously insane, but we're still not done. The Oh My God particle wasn't only fast and energetic, it was also photogenic, or at least photongenic. And what I mean by that is that the Oh My God particle literally had 100 quintillion times more photon energy than visible light, which is honestly hard to even conceptualize. But just to put it into context, here's a side-by-side comparison. The Oh My God particle was 20 million times more photongenic than the highest photon energy measured ever in electromagnetic radiation. I think it goes without saying that the Oh My God particle has definitely earned its name, and just by looking at its stats, it's hard to imagine how rare this type of particle even is. And I do understand that this first section was very much so technical and in the weeds, and these numbers really didn't mean much, but hopefully, if nothing else, the massive multipliers of all of these numbers kind of just goes to show how insane the God particle was, even if you're like me and know nothing about particles at all. The God particle was something really cool that was seen in space, and we're only just getting started. The Boötes Void. The year is 1981. You are an astronomer working alone, once again, late at night. Today was like any other day, and you were tasked with doing a galactic survey of redshift in the universe. And while the specifics of a redshift survey doesn't matter, what does matter is what you are about to discover. As you are surveying the universe, you notice something you have not seen before. Your monitoring device has gone from receiving a lot of information to essentially no information in the matter of a few degrees. And while at first it looks like the tool you're using has simply stopped working or is no longer working correctly, but after moving it and recalibrating it, you notice that you are getting the same results. To you, this is interesting because this almost reminds you of what happened when you go over a void in the universe. However, this void is different. It's nowhere near the size of the voids you've measured in the past, leading you to believe it's not a void. Although, upon further inspection, you realize that you haven't just discovered a new void in the universe. You have just discovered the largest known void in the visible universe. And this void is so big, in fact, that it's known as the Great Nothing. This is a terrifying start, and we're only just getting started. In the first section, we talked about so many numbers and facts about something that was very much so real and happening. But the Boötes Void is literally the exact opposite. The only numbers I can discuss are the numbers representing the lack that exists within this void. You see, as you look at a map of universe, the more and more you zoom out, the more and more you notice a sort of web or filament structure that exists through all of the superclusters of galaxies in the visible universe. Obviously, the natural byproduct of this web-like structure is the voids or gaps between these clusters. These voids alone aren't necessarily rare, and they're not completely empty either. They do contain smaller galaxies, although they're not nearly as populated as the superclusters that are more observable. Although the reason why the Boötes Void is so significant is, well, of course, because of its sheer size. From one end to another, the Boötes Void is 330 million light years across. Of course, meaning if you were traveling at the speed of light, it would take you 330 million years to cross it. Now, for context, if the Boötes Void wasn't a void and was actually a supercluster, it would be safe to assume that this area of universe could contain up to 2,000 galaxies. However, because the Boötes Void is, well, a void, it only contains just 60 galaxies, which, relatively speaking, means it's more or less empty. As of right now, the center of the Boötes Void is 700 million light years from Earth. Although, interestingly, if the Milky Way galaxy was put smack dab in the middle of the Boötes Void, astronomers on Earth would not have known about any other galaxy until the 1960s. Because of the sheer lack of anything around our galaxy, any technology prior to the 1960s would not have been able to detect any other galaxies. And I can only imagine the scientific revelation happening in the 60s if we were in the middle of the void and had just discovered a new galaxy for the first time. And while voids are common and natural in the universe, something about this void being extremely large is, at the very least, eerie, and just some small part terrifying. Okay, this is off topic, but do you smell that? It smells like you didn't shower. And if that's the case, I feel bad for your anime body pillow. But in case you did, you're obviously not using the right stuff, which is why this video is sponsored by Cheeky Soap. Cheeky Soap is my favorite soap company by far, and it was actually founded by this guy.
Hey, Brody.
Over the last year, I got absolutely obsessed with bar soap, but I quickly ran into one major problem. Almost every bar soap that I tried left my sensitive skin feeling dry. It was for this reason that when I first tried Cheeky, I was so impressed that it didn't only smell good, but it literally left my skin feeling moisturized after just one shower, which is why I was so eager to partner with them when they asked me. Not only do they have an amazing handful of core scents in their collection, but on top of that, Cheeky even told me that if we're able to get enough support, they are willing to make a custom Trust Me Bro soap bar. So, if you've never tried bar soap before, or you use bar soap and are looking for something new, I would definitely recommend giving Cheeky a try using my link in the description to not only get a discount, but to help support the channel. Click the link in the description, use my code, and get the starter bundle today to upgrade your showers. I guarantee you will not be looking back. Now, let's get back to the video. Dark galaxies. The year is 1984, and you and your fellow astronomer are in the observatory currently overlooking the Virgo cluster. The Virgo cluster is of particular interest to you because you think it looks cool. But what you are on the verge of discovering goes far beyond just being cool. As you are looking through the Virgo cluster, you notice a weird phenomenon. As you point your telescope in a specific direction, you notice that your telescope appears to be looking at, well, nothing in particular. However, all of your equipment seems to be suggesting that you are looking at a galaxy. This is obviously perplexing because you can see directly that there is no galaxy in your direct line of sight. However, all of the data you are getting seems to be telling a different story. As you look closer through the telescope, you can see a few galaxies in the distance, and perhaps your devices are mistaking two galaxies for one larger, closer galaxy, although based on all of the information you're getting, it appears that you are looking at a galaxy that you almost can't see. And that's when it hits you. You are looking at a galaxy, but you're looking at a galaxy no one has ever seen before. A galaxy known as a dark galaxy, or an ultra-diffuse galaxy. Dark galaxies are quite interesting, and it's taken nearly 30 years of studying them to have a significant amount of information on them. However, the more we study dark galaxies, the more we are left with questions rather than answers. As I described in the intro story, which I totally just made up, I have no idea if that's how astronomy equipment works, it was discovered that yes, dark galaxies are such a thing, although not much was known about them at the time. Although fast forward to the modern day, we now know a lot more about these interesting and rare galaxies. Dark galaxies or ultra-diffuse galaxies are known as such because they are extremely low in luminosity. They don't produce a lot of light, and they are very hard to see. They're so hard to see, in fact, that they're actually sometimes referred to as see-through galaxies, because it is actually easier to see galaxies further in the distance behind them than it is to see the actual galaxy itself. And the reason why these dark galaxies are so dark is due to their lack of star-forming gas, which results in these galaxies having fewer new stars and being almost exclusively full of old, dying stars. For reference, here's an example on screen. This is a picture of NGC 1052 DF2, and it's a dark galaxy that was discovered in 2018, and we'll discuss it more later, but you basically can't see it. For reference, this is the Milky Way, obviously the iconic swirly ball of light that we all associate with the term galaxy. As you can tell, one of these galaxies is not like the other. Although interestingly, they're not as different as they may seem. Dark galaxies typically have a similar size to our Milky Way. However, the mass of these dark galaxies is much more similar to galaxies that are way more tiny than the Milky Way. For reference, the Milky Way is estimated to have anywhere from 200 to 400 million stars. Although a dark galaxy of the same size would only have roughly 1 billion stars, compared to the nearly 400 billion the Milky Way has. That fact alone makes the whole see-through aspect of a see-through galaxy make a lot more sense. But it definitely doesn't answer every question we have about dark galaxies. From their original discovery in 1984 to the modern day, scientists have observed two opposite traits when it comes to dark galaxies. Some dark galaxies, unsurprisingly, contain an extreme amount of dark matter, and it's believed by scientists that some literally consist almost primarily of dark matter due to the lack of stars. Now, dark matter being present in a galaxy is not surprising whatsoever, and it's believed by most scientists that dark matter is a necessity for galaxies to form. Now, that's all fine and well until you understand that in recent years, like we're talking 2018, there has been dark galaxies that have been discovered with basically no dark matter whatsoever. And what this means, honestly, I don't know, besides the fact that we really don't know much about dark galaxies. But of course, the mystery doesn't end there, because while some dark galaxies have almost all dark matter and some dark galaxies almost have no dark matter, the common denominator between both dark galaxies is the fact that we don't know how they're formed. There are some scientists that theorize that these galaxies are old and formed from the earliest galaxies, which is why they are out of star-forming gas. But yeah, these galaxies are rather mysterious and elusive, and almost kind of seem like the ghosts of galaxies, because you can barely see them, they're translucent, we don't know how they're formed, they're on either end of the extreme when it comes to dark matter, and we still don't know a ton about them. And I guess one more funny fact about dark galaxies, which has nothing to do with the galaxy itself, is that if you go to the Ultra Diffuse Galaxy Wikipedia page, you will see that it's discovered by two men, Alan Sandabich and Bruno Bengelli. And if you hover over Alan's name, it'll show you a picture of him and tell you about all of his credentials. You know, American astronomer from California, blah, blah, blah. But if you hover over Bruno, there is no picture, and all it says is, Bruno Bengelli is a Swiss curler. And I can only assume this is like an incorrect hyperlink, but if this is accurate, that's kind of hilarious. And it also reminds me of that one like Impractical Joker sketch where Q and Murr are giving a presentation, and Q gives all of his credentials when introducing himself, and then Murr has to introduce himself as Dandy Chiggins with no qualifications whatsoever. But yeah, dark galaxies are weird, and for the longest time, we didn't even know they were there. Rogue planets. Have you ever been laying on your bed on a Friday night, no texts on your phone, no messages, no calls, just you watching your favorite YouTube video, eating a snack, all by yourself? To some, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. And to some, that sounds like pure bliss. But the common denominator in both situations is that you are alone, or lonely. And while some of us experience loneliness more than others, nobody on this planet could imagine, let alone experience, the loneliness that a rogue planet experiences. When you think of planets, obviously you think of rock or gas formations floating around a sun, and in most cases, that is exactly what a planet is. But what if I told you there was a nearly countless number of planets that had no sun, and no orbit whatsoever. They are simply flying aimlessly through space. No friends, no direction, just inertia and loneliness. Now, I actually want to take a step back and unpack this a bit, because if you listen closely, you notice I say nearly countless number of rogue planets, and that is the case. For context, in the Milky Way alone, as I mentioned earlier, there's anywhere from 200 to 400 billion stars. And let's say on average, there's 5 planets orbiting each of those stars. Assuming there is 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy, that would mean that there is 2 trillion planets in our Milky Way galaxy that are orbiting stars. That alone is an insane number. However, it is estimated by scientists and astronomers that there is likely more rogue planets in the Milky Way than there is stars and starbound planets in the Milky Way combined. I don't know about you, but to me, that information when I first heard it was insane. And it's probably even more insane if you are just now hearing about rogue planets for the first time. But the lore goes deeper. For starters, we need to discuss how these lone wolf planets even come to be. And there is actually 2 primary methods. The first method of rogue planet creation actually starts with a starbound planet. You see, sometimes when a planet in a solar system is misbehaving, other planets gang up to use their gravitational powers to eject that planet from the solar system. And in case the term gravitational powers wasn't enough of a giveaway, I just made that up. But the truth isn't too far from that fiction. There are very real instances where gravitational interactions happen between planets in solar systems that end up ejecting planets from solar systems entirely, leading them on a brand new trajectory that has no formal orbit, turning a once starbound planet into a rogue planet, completely shifting life as that planet had known it. The other way that rogue planets are formed are through the same process that stars used to form. The only difference is, however, that rogue planets that form through this process do not gain the mass required to become a star and do not essentially ignite, turning into, well, what a star becomes. And interestingly, it's believed that most of the rogue planets are formed through this method. And most of the planets that form through this method are large gas giants, unsurprisingly, and they're actually typically warm, not the freezing cold wasteland you would assume a rogue planet to be. Now, interestingly, there is some debate on whether or not planets formed through this method are actually planets or if they're brown dwarf stars. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to consider them planets. Also because these rogue planets are really the only rogue planets we have information about. Simply because these massive gas giant rogue planets are the easiest to observe and study because they are somewhat just barely visible due to their size and small amount of light, which is in direct contrast to the smaller rock planets that are essentially invisible to image detection used by astronomers. And it's for that reason that studying rogue planets is extremely hard. They have no known trajectory, they don't even have a purpose, there's nothing around them, no light source, and they are simply lone wolves on their own mission. So just remember that if you ever feel lonely laying in your bed, there are planets in our very galaxy that are light years from any solar system, and even those solar systems that they are closest to are still impossibly far away, and also not their home. And their home was either a place that they were rejected from or never even had in the first place. But in case you feel rejected or like you need a home, feel free to subscribe to the Trust Me Bro channel, because we are always accepting new bros, and we have the best community on YouTube. Oh, and we also post cool videos every Friday. So if you like videos like this one, definitely feel free to subscribe, and maybe even like the video if you want a part 2 about crazy things in space. But enough of that, back to the video. The Space Angels. The year is 1984, and you are a Russian cosmonaut aboard the Soviet space station, Salyut 7. Aboard the space station with you are 2 fellow cosmonauts, and the 3 of you were on the space station to conduct low-orbit experiments. But while spending time in space and working as an astronaut may seem like a dream come true to many, to you and your team, your time in space was anything but pleasant. During your time on the space station, you and your team experienced fuel leaks, loss of power, and other critical errors that demanded a lot of mental and physical attention. And it was for that reason, near the end of your trip, you were excited to come home. Although, in one of the final days on your stay in the Soviet space station, you and your 2 colleagues experienced something you have never seen before. The day was ending like any other. However, you were noticing something your colleagues were not. It almost seemed like the cabin of the space station was filling up with some sort of orange dust. Not physical dust, but almost a thick orange light. But almost after you began to process what you could be looking at, you notice a bright light filling the cabin. And this light was observed not only by you, but by the 2 other cosmonauts as well. But the bright light that filled the cabin seemed almost blinding, and you had to shield your eyes. That is, until moments later, it appeared to subside, and you decide to look out the window of the space station to see what is going on. And it is at this moment when you and your cosmonaut colleagues look out the window and see something you have never seen before. These massive figures seem to have wings, faces, and they are comparable to the size of multi-story buildings. They are a bright orange light, and they have a calm, smiling demeanor and appear to just be observing the station. At first, you had to imagine that you were simply losing your mind, although when your two colleagues confirmed that they had seen the same thing, you were all left in awe, as what you have just seen seemed impossible. And only moments later, what you had just been looking at was gone, and you were only left with the memory of one of the most insane things you could ever see in space. Not many days after this experience, you are picked up from your ship and brought home, and once home, you begin to retell the story of what you saw, and the legend of the space angel of Salyut 7 begins. For the last entry on this video, I definitely wanted to kind of switch it up, and obviously this isn't a scientific discovery. This is definitely more or less of a debated phenomenon that is still not understood to this day. And well, I wanted to leave things, I guess, on a cliffhanger. Unlike every other entry in this video, this sighting or reporting wasn't discovered by a scientist on ground. It was discovered by a cosmonaut literally in a space station. And for those who don't know, a cosmonaut is simply a Russian astronaut. Now, back to this insane story. Every single member of the crew that was on the space station confirmed that they saw these massive angels for multiple minutes, and each one of them told the exact same story about what they saw. Now, interestingly, when they came back to Earth to tell the story of what they saw at the end of their trip, it was all written off almost immediately. People were claiming that they all shared the same hallucination, and for that reason, this information wasn't necessarily made public until the fall of the Soviet Union years later. Interestingly, these glowing angelic figures were not only seen by the first crew of Salyut 7, and it was reported that another crew years later also witnessed the exact same phenomenon. Although the scientific community was very quick to strongly reject any sort of supernatural beings actually being present during this sighting. One of the theories that scientists presented to try to make sense of this entire situation was that what they were seeing was an extreme case of atmospheric and optical effects combined with human perception under stress. Now, it was known that the missions that these crews embarked on the Soviet space station were not pleasant in the slightest. They both encountered numerous issues, and also being in space in general is not an easy task, and it's for that reason that it's not unlikely for there to be some sort of, well, mind tricks at play, but that doesn't explain everything. And another theory suggests that there is probably some sort of rare plasma or aura-like phenomenon reacting with sunlight at the orbital altitude that the space station was at, creating this interesting visual phenomenon, which isn't impossible, but it's also not confirmed. This story, while interesting, has no concrete ending and is kind of still to this day open to interpretation. And in the comments below, I kind of want to start a conversation of what you guys think this could be. I know I didn't give too much information, but if multiple groups of cosmonauts saw the same thing on multiple times, could it be that they were all simply sharing a hallucination? Could it be that they were all under the same mental stress? Could it be the perfect Goldilocks zone for some sort of plasma-induced light? Or was there something more at play here? I personally have no idea, and this could be supernatural or nothing of the sort. And maybe all of these cosmonauts were just lying just for a gag, but realistically, we don't know, and the truth is we likely never will. Which, for that reason, might make this the craziest and potentially scariest entry on the entire list. I really hate to leave it on a cliffhanger, but I thought this entry was too interesting not to add on this space video. And I guess with that being said, if you guys want more videos about space, please feel free to leave a like or even leave a comment below saying part 2 or just more space videos. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the video on screen right now. It is a video about things that science still can't explain. And in that video, I talk about so many interesting and odd and unexplained scientific phenomena that we still do not understand fully. So if you want to tickle your brain or maybe just try to solve some of them, definitely check out that video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, trust me, bro.